Hello, everybody. And today, Melissa is making me take lead, and I'm not comfortable with it, but it's cool. Hi. Today, we are going to be talking about a really heavy topic, actually, which is why I feel even more uncomfortable about taking lead on this one. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. I am Shekinah, and I am here to introduce to you today
Melissa. I think that's the first time you've ever said your name normally in the show, because I was like, Shekinah. Anyway, I am Melissa. Hello. Hi.
I'm Meenakshi. Hello.
And I am a cat. Hi.
You are a cat.
She also
I
heard that.
am cat.
Okay, thank you.
I am cat.
You definitely said a cat.
Yeah, you did. All right.
I'm not that.
We don't
be
take
here
those
if I thought like that.
identifications.
Yeah,
here.
no.
I would have been thrown out. I promise, guys.
The only one that I would have accepted is I am Groot.
Anyway, so let's see, what's the panel question today? The panel question today, before we get into our heavy topic, is what is the difference between love bombing and healthy affection? I'm going to ask Manak to go first.
I knew it. She gave me the eyes. She gave me those eyes.
I know, you darted
Okay.
away really quick too, so it just even motivated me even more.
such a teacher thing. Oh my goodness. Not well, you. Like I felt like the student in that moment, you know. Okay. So love bombing and healthy affection. I think love bombing is literally I had to look this up. I'm just gonna put it out there. Actually, my husband helped me too. I was like, homie, I need your help on this one. And he's like, me, what I did. No, just kidding. He didn't say He did not. He was not like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think love bombing is very one-sided, like over the top kind of affection. It's a little weird, to be honest. And I just think it's uncomfortable. Let me give an example. I went on a date. This was, I don't know, years ago. But it was like a first date off of a dating app. And we went to dinner. I think we met at this place or whatever. And he was very like hand-holdy and was like calling me baby on the first date. It was it was bad. It's real bad. Very uncomfortable situation. Very much a love bombing situation. And so that's like my best way to describe it is exactly what that guy did is love bombing to the max. It was just way too much. And we did, and I was so new to dating and like how to date. So I definitely thought it was weird, but didn't know how to say no to it, I guess. And like, oh, maybe this is normal, you know, that kind of thing. So we did like continue chatting for, I think maybe another week or so. But like within all of our FaceTimes, he was like, baby, like he just kept saying it and it was just too much. And it was like way over the top kind of situation for trying to get to know someone for the first time. So that's definitely a love bombing situation. At least I think so. Very one-sided, not actually taking into consideration the feelings of the other person.
Yeah.
It's just all about you essentially and how you're projecting. And healthy affection, I think it definitely goes both ways. It's honorable, it's enjoyable, it's healthy, it's within the right boundaries like we talked about last episode, both within dating and in marriage. So yeah,
I really like having guests because they look these things up beforehand.
Yeah. I agree. Oh my gosh, I should have done that.
I know.
I wrote it. I
I've gotten
should've
so
done that.
used to it that we're just like, I'll just bounce off what everyone else is saying. But then every time we have a guest, like I looked this up and I talked about it with my spouse, and I'm just like, thank you. Now we have an educated answer.
Yeah.
you're welcome.
No, I really like that though, because I didn't really know. I heard the term love bombing for the first time on a reel, I think, and I was like, huh. I don't think I really experienced that, but I think that's a good definition of how do you like? Is it really love bombing? Let's say two people are both like really affectionate and overly like. What if he dated a girl that was super into that? Like, would it still be love bombing? But I like how you defined it as it's not taking into consideration the other person's response or availability to that, so I think that's a really good is if you're over affectionate, calling baby, and but the other person is not reciprocating that, you might just be love bombing that person. So I think that's a good example because I really didn't know. I was like, I don't think I really ever experienced that personally because I've only ever gone out with guys who are very like, is this okay? Like they're very like they're very what's the word?
Considerate.
Of my needs and what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like that.
There's definitely a difference there in dating.
Yeah.
I would say in marriage, it's actually, in my opinion, more one and the same. But by the time you're married, you have established that emotional connection.
Yeah.
So you understand when that person is being, that
Smothered.
lovey-dovey, exactly, and where that's coming from, versus in the dating realm and not understanding, where, like, it builds over time. And I think, to paint the picture, it goes from the love bombing or what could be love bombing into the healthy affection. And that's how you're establishing the correct emotional connection. Whereas it could not go that direction and could stay in just the love bombing and and then that's where you don't want to, like, I would cut off that relationship, essentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you find where to fine tune that balance. And then in marriage, it's what it needs to be because you've established it together.
That's good. Thank you for the education. I didn't know. What about you, Kat?
The way that, like, I understood love bombing versus healthy affection, or the way that I've seen it a lot, is love bombing comes from a very insecure place of, I want to throw myself out there and let this person know all that I have so that they can like me and want me, and therefore in turn return a relationship to me. So I think it comes out of that place, again, just not knowing your identity and not having, honestly, to a degree, like, not having respect for yourself and just giving all of yourself to that person, rather than healthy affection, which comes out of that healthy place between two people of, like, oh, I love you, let me just hug you, let me hold your hand, let me just lay my head on your shoulder, because, like, I find security and, like, I find peace in that. Like, there's a genuine love that I'm affecting you with, rather than love bombing of, like, I need to give this to you to prove myself, and because, like, I don't have something else, so I'm gonna find it in you, and I'm gonna just take what I can, and hopefully you like it and return it back. So
I used to say, when I was in an unhealthy place, I used to say, like, oh, I just want to give so and so, like, all this love that I have to give them, and that's not a wrong thing to say. But I say it was from an unhealthy place because I wasn't understanding that I was receiving that love from the Lord already. And so, like, in essence of what you're saying, it's that insecurity, which totally was in me. It was absolutely an insecurity because I hadn't established that connection with the Lord yet to know that that love came from him first. And then the way I wanted to be able to show that to the other person at that time wasn't coming from that godly perspective. It was from that insecurity. So
That's good.
Yeah. So love bombing, for the way that I understand it, right? And the way that I think it's, like, put out, like, on social media or whatever, it's actually, like, a very narcissistic trait. Because it's a manipulative way. So, for example, when you're dating somebody, right? And then especially I'm a woman, so obviously I see it from this perspective, where when somebody comes in hot like that, right? And they're, like, doing all these amazing things, they're, like, moving heaven and earth for you, and, like, just doing everything they can to just make you feel like you're the only person in the world, and then suddenly, like, they just switch up, right? Because obviously something like that, it's not something that can be sustained, because how you start is what you build on. And so if you're constantly, like, outpouring these, like, ridiculous, extravagant things, which I'm not saying necessarily bad within the right context, how you were saying, Meenakshi, it's still very, like, manipulative, right? Because then now, let's say that you're the one that's getting love bombed, and then suddenly the person is, like, they pull back, or now they're like, well, I did this for you, like, how come you're not doing that for me, and blah 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 blah. Like, it really becomes this thing where now you become, like, subject to their highs and lows of emotion. So the love bombing doesn't come out of a place of, like, mature love. It comes out of a place of emotional response, right? And so tying it with what even Kat was saying, it's something that, like, I think a lot of people that deal with it, one, outside of the narcissistic tendencies, I think it can also be somebody that really struggles with, like, abandonment, and somebody that struggles with, I love how you even brought in even the low self-esteem, right? Because, or not having that connection with the Lord, because it's like you want somebody to second guess leaving you, right? And so when they look at you, you want them to think, like, the best of things. And so then that's the reason why you're like, no, but, like, life is always good, right? The picture that I have in my mind is, like, a little girl that's with their dad and their dad is like distracted, and then they're like doing all they can to get their attention. To me, it's that. Right. And so it's not because they feel secure in their father's love. It's because they feel insecure. Right. And so when you're feeling insecure, that's when you act out. That's when you do the things. And so to me, the love bombing is a way, like, overall, I think it can be more of a red flag than it is of like a good flag, right? Of a green flag, because it's like we just met. Like, why are you calling me baby? Why are you like doing all these crazy things? Like, it's a little bit weird. It's one of those things where it's just like, I don't know that you want me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you were saying.
You just want a relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think there's that, like what I was saying about the balance and what you said, someone who's maybe new to dating is trying to figure out like, how much do I give? How much do I not? And when that communication happens with the other person and they're willing to know, okay, that was a little much, and I'm not, and it could get back to that point, but maybe just not yet. It's knowing how to have that line and where that line is. Yeah. And if that other person is able to recognize that, then you can continue, right? Yeah. But if they can't, then that it's more manipulative and it's more narcissistic. And that guy that I went on a date with, it was that, because eventually I was like, oh, sorry, homie, like I cannot do this. Like, this is not okay. And he was so upset about it. But like in a very victimizing mentality type way. And at the time, I mean, obviously it didn't continue, but I didn't pick up on like, well, it's pretty narcissistic. I'm just
trying to be a nice guy. I'm just trying,
Good for you.
Exactly.
Not for me.
Exactly.
You're the one with the problem.
I hope you guys are seeing this on YouTube because her little facial expression was so cute. Okay.
No, I like that. So we just covered, this isn't on the notes, but I have a follow-up question. Because we just covered how to identify love bombing. How do you identify it within yourself? Maybe you're the one love bombing. What if, you're dating and maybe you're not sure, am I giving this person too much attention or too many compliments? Like, how do you identify that within yourself?
I feel like an obvious way would be like the person's response to it of like, oh, like, how is this making them feel? Is this something that they're enjoying and that like cool, like, because I'm a very
do you like that? Do you like these gifts? Do you like that?
Tell me. No, because like I'm a very like physically affectionate person, and like my family, they're not. So yeah, like I tell her, like I reach across the table, I'm like, this is all I need, at least that. I need to know that you love me and that you haven't abandoned me, right? Guys, I don't have issues, promise. Anyways, but I'm not a narcissist. I promise. Let me just leave now. Yeah. Let you guys just speak to me.
I'm gonna cut that out. No, I'm kidding.
But like if the person is like, if like they're receiving it very well, or if it's making them uncomfortable, it's like, oh, like, okay, then I'm possibly doing something wrong. Let me check myself. Or if the person is like, if you have like a very blocked off response to that, like, no, like this is what I'm giving, I'm loving on you, then that's a red flag. When you don't think to check yourself. When you think that you're not doing anything wrong, even if you're not, it's always healthy and it's always best to go back of like, okay, let me fix what I can, because this is all that I can control. If you really think about it, I can only control myself. I can't manipulate things. You can try, but it's horrible.
Very horrible.
I like that.
I think if we're talking Christian dating, right? In last episode, we talked about boundaries not being just the two of you, like making sure that you're around people. I think that's a good place. Like if you're dating, but you're in group settings or you're in public places and whatnot, and your friends are involved, as far as like, you introduce them to the friend group and whatever. Hopefully you have the right friends who are willing to tell you when it's too far, like they can see it as well within the relationship. I mean, my hope is that that's what my friends would do, is if I was being a little too much, they'd be honest with me and like, hey, I'm seeing this from an outside perspective. And, because I might be so head over heels or whatever in the relationship. So I'm giving all that love bombing, and he might be reacting in a way that I'm just still so blinded to, so that so in the friendship realm, hopefully my friends are able to help me in that situation too.
We will.
That's good. We're not gonna need to chill.
I think if you have a constant need to defend yourself, because I think a narcissist, what they tend to do when like I know that we're going to transition into that, right? So what we tend to do when it comes to that is this constant, like the reason why people love bomb is because they want to show you how great they are. It has nothing to do with you. Let me tell you that. It has absolutely nothing to do with you, and has everything to do with them and how they look. And so the moment that, like, for example, if you begin to tell somebody, hey, like what you're doing is I like it. I mean, like, it's nice. It's a good intention, but I don't like the way that it's making me feel, whatever. And then all of a sudden, how they respond is a red flag. So to me, because I mean, I think you can act out, like there's this thing, right, where you recognize traits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're that person. So the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, you know, there's been times in relationships I've even had conversations with friends when they're like, hey, you know what, like, where they've told me, like, I think you're putting a little bit too much on me. And I'm just like, okay. In that moment, it wasn't received well at all. I was very young. But now when I look at it, I'm like, wow, like the fact that they loved me enough to have that conversation, you know, like that was big, you know? And now, you know, we have an amazing friendship. And so with that, like, whenever I feel like I have the tendency where it's just like, I feel like I'm backed up in a corner or whatever, like my initial reaction, my flight or fight response is a great indicator if I'm acting out in that way. And for me, constantly, like, that's something that I check myself with, just because I think we've experienced a lot of pain and hurt from people that refuse to check themselves. And so, like, even just recently I had a conversation with somebody that I'm not necessarily in the best of terms with. And, you know, they kind of told me things that they felt I did wrong. And so before, I would have automatically been like, well, this and this and that, like, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, you know what, like, I honestly brought it down to scripture, and it's a little bit of a different context, but not really, because in the word it says, can two walk together unless they agree? Mm-hmm. And then it also, you know, one of the things that I think I've learned to fear the Lord more. And it's just like, okay, well, maybe they're pointing something out, like, and that I'm not seeing. And so, and I took a step back and I was like, you know what, like, I'm sorry. Like, you're right. Like, that's how you felt and that's what you thought. It's not what I was thinking, and it's not my intention. So I'm sorry that it looked like that, but I'm sorry. And then, you know what that did? That gave me grace in order for me to be able to not just forgive the person as well, but it allowed me to receive the grace from God to be like, hey, like, yeah, those are things that you should work on. Or maybe, you know, like the person was just being overly emotional, whatever. But as James says, right, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And so if I want to have the authority to call out other people and to be able to see it in other people, then I realize that I'm a human, right? Yeah. And maybe there's some things where I can act like that. Sometimes I can act obsessive. Sometimes I can act this ways. And that's why I have friendships around me that I'm like so transparent with, like 1000%. I remember Denise was one time was like, bro, like you're being a bit much. And I was like, oh, you're right. And was it easy? Like, and it wasn't in that moment where I said, you're right. I was just like, it took me some time and I took it to the Lord. But I think not being afraid of being faced with these things. Like, we're all human. Like, dude, like my background is hurt, like, you know? And so if I feel like I need to defend myself against that and make a case for myself, then yeah, I may be right. But at the end of the day, I end up more hurt because I missed an opportunity to deal with my crap, you know? And so don't be like, you know, what we were talking about with sex, like, don't be afraid of facing the things that you're dealing with. Like, don't deny them. That's where people end up in scandals. Oh my gosh. And you end up hurting people in the long run. But yeah, how to identify it in yourself is see what your immediate response is when somebody tells you that something that you're doing is wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And then, my immediate thought on that is kind of what Kat was saying, is check yourself constantly. Yeah. Of if you do feel like maybe there's an abundance of compliments coming from yourself, identify the why. Is it because I genuinely just do care about this person? I do want them to know how great they are, or are you feeling afraid that how maybe they're responding to you, or maybe they're a little short with you today, and it's coming out of a place of fear of, I really love you and I really think you're great and you're awesome and I don't want you to leave me, you know, like, is it coming out of a place of fear? And that's not a healthy response. And so, but also another trait that's really healthy is, like I said, I've only ever dated guys who question, you know, hey, is this okay? Are you comfortable with this? And so maybe put that into habit yourself of, are you okay with me, you know, maybe buying you a gift? Are you okay with me, you know, holding your hand? And just, it goes back to that communication of, are you guys on the same page? Or don't just dive into habits just to test it. Because sometimes you might be testing that person's boundary and now it's awkward. And it's just easier to go, hey, are you okay with me maybe leaning in for a kiss right now? Like, and it might not seem like
as you're leaning in, hey,
hey, mama.
It might not be that movie romantic, like you're both feeling it, you both just know, and you go in for that
Nothing's
kiss.
like that.
Nothing's like that. It's okay to ask, like, hey, you know, like, are you comfortable with me kissing you with you right now? I've had that question asked, and I've had to answer honestly. There's been times where I've been like, no, I'm not feeling, you know. Oh yeah.
Actual. Sometimes those
maybe don't respond like that, but you know.
sometimes those fairy tale moments can happen though.
Okay.
Because
Fair.
like my first date with Justin, we were like in the middle of our date, and so we were leaving the park. We had done like paddle boat riding and stuff, and we were walking back to the car, and he like subtly held my hand, but it was like the cutest thing ever. Like I had never experienced anything like that.
Wow.
So it's total for me. I mean, obviously I still remember it and everything. It was total fairy tale moment. So I think those moments can
and
happen.
I think small things like that, holding a hand, I think small things like that are totally appropriate. At the end of the day, you could have pulled away. Like, it would have been awkward, but sometimes those risks are necessary to find that out. But I'm talking about more of like the physical stuff and more of the, you know,
The
again, the love
stuff.
bombing stuff. Like if you're feeling like, I'm not really sure if she's like feeling it, you know, just, it's okay to ask.
Yeah.
You know?
If he picked me up and like put me over his shoulder, we'd have
let's
a
go,
problem.
babe.
Like hand holding is low risk, I think. But
That's a low risk
depends.
one. Yeah.
If you're part of a Baptist church, it might be high risk. Like, I don't know.
So I think if you're really just not sure, if you're, you know, like, is this a risk worth taking? You know, just question, you know, ask the question. I think communication is key.
Yeah.
But I think this actually goes really nicely into our topic, which is identifying a narcissist. And I think that's so big in our culture today. I feel like it's talked about constantly, you know, on social media and like YouTube, and you can just Google search a narcissist and all of this material of how you can like identify it and the other person and how to protect yourself and all this kind of stuff pulls up. And so I guess my first question is, why do you think that is? Why do you think in today's society now there's such a boom of narcissism being revealed and identified in people?
That's good.
And if you don't have an answer, that's okay too.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is social media.
Yeah.
Because people expose themselves online so much in both even the love bombing ways and in the obviously the negative ways, you know, like you can just see so much more, and it's a good thing, but also kind of a hard thing. We raise a generation of selfie takers, and you know, I want people to like and thumbs up and comments and then it feeds into the comparison, right? And so you're seeing, you know, a certain situation online, and all of a sudden my husband does that, or oh my gosh, the guy I'm dating does that. Like, is he a narcissist? Is he not? You know, like then you start spiraling in that way. So obviously with even just down to like algorithms of that stuff coming up, of course it's going to be more prevalent online, and being able to search it and have more information out there, again, in both good ways and to help for the boundaries and stuff, but also not in those good ways, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think just pulling off of like the social media aspect, like as much as it exposes, I think it also builds that up in a way, because social media and a lot of like the things that the world is just saying right now, it's just very self-serving and self-focused of let me get myself to look great and let me puff myself up. Just so I can do this and I can sell this brand. Or even like in the industry, a lot of people, they puff you up themselves and they build that up in you because they need you to keep remaining this face so that they keep selling this product, so that they can keep selling this book or this image that they're trying to portray. So I think a lot of it is made in that and then exposed shortly after that.
Yeah.
That's good. I would have said the same thing. The social media, and I think a lot more people are getting weary of it. You know what I mean? I think that's why there's much more of that, because I think people are just craving like authenticity, and don't know how to be that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's why there's been such an uptick, because it's like, right, like what is real, what is not? Because especially with social media, like a lot of people, they live in that world, right? As opposed to living in this world and then just that being something that's added on. But I think it would be that. I think people are just craving authenticity, that they're just like, dude, what is all this, you know?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I didn't even think of social media when I was thinking about that. My response is we grew up in a generation of, you know, everyone's a trophy winner. And we had this whole generation of people who were, you know, the gentle parenting and you can do no wrong. And we had this whole society of just people who grew up with that mentality of you get a trophy no matter what, you know, like.
That's a good point.
And so I think between social media and just having this generation of like gentle parenting really played a part into that, of why this is such a big thing and a big topic that people are now discovering as an issue.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
All good. So what was the next question? Let's see. So, okay. That's a good one. What is narcissism? Like, what would your best clinical definition of a narcissist be if you had to come up with one? I'll go with Melissa.
Narcissism is just having a high self-importance.
Yeah.
Just dwindling it down to the most basic definitions. I think it's just that, like, where everybody can just needs to serve like your image of yourself. And I think it's important to also say that narcissism is not just overly confident people. I think it's also very low confident people. And I think those are the most that go under the radar, because like, for example, right, I spoke about this at church, where unworthiness is one of the most like wicked spirits out in the world, because unworthiness, what it does, it wants you to serve it. So if I'm feeling bad about myself, I want everybody, and obviously I'm speaking generically, not me, but if I'm feeling bad about myself, right, then I want everybody around me to make me feel better. When in reality, it's my job to make myself feel better, and it's important where that source is, right? Which obviously we know from a Christian perspective, it's the Lord. And so I think, to me, being able to identify it in that way and define it in that way, where it's not just this like high confident thing in somebody, but it's also like a really low image of themselves. And so now everybody is like enslaved to that, you know? I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah.
How about you, Minak?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing as far as high self-importance. It's that. I have more thoughts on like the signs and things like that, and like how to find that. But I agree. I'm kind of in the same realm. It's that. It's others are inferior. It's lacking empathy.
Yeah, that's good.
And not being able to. I mean, I think when it comes to girls and guys, girls are just naturally more emotional, right? And guys less, some. But there's a big difference between being able to share with your spouse or with who you're dating how you're feeling about something, and them not being able to, at least being willing to listen, you know, and finding that conversation or that balance, doing that versus just no empathy at all. Like, there's a very, very key difference there to help, you know, determine where some of those narcissistic tendencies come in.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think it's just narcissism is just a very self-serving thing, a very self-image thing. And I think like a way that I can paint it most is with a recent experience that I had. I was recently on a set, and there was this one actor that we were working with, and it made me just laugh, like thinking that I experienced this right before this episode. But this person, he, like, the things that he was doing he was just very narcissistic, in that he was very uplifting of himself and what's the word, like pushing people down a lot.
Yeah.
And in the way that he was doing it, like up front, it didn't come off as that, or I didn't recognize it because it seemed like he was trying to help other people. But in the end, like he was just really bringing them down. With our director, he would criticize the things that he was saying by trying to put his input and what he thought was better and trying to diminish the leadership that was on our team. With our DP, he was trying to correct him and give him new things, saying that he knew better of different things rather than genuinely offering to help. He was just trying to be the leader, and he was, I don't say this to hit on him. It was just a genuine thing that it actually made me kind of sad. I'm like, oh, like now I don't want to work with you. Like, but everything he did around everybody, he would uplift themselves. He name dropped a lot about like what he was doing, everything that he's doing, that he's done, that he wants to do. And while I understand that there can be a sort of like pride in like the work that you've done, he never invited other people to be a part of that conversation. He didn't say like, oh my gosh, you guys are actually doing amazing, or can I put this input so that I can help you? It was to get his name out there. And so it was just that very like not self-aware, but just like, I'm great and I need you to see that I'm great. And in that, it's just, there was so much discouragement amongst the whole team. It actually brought everybody else closer together and it just singled him out because we were all like, no, like we feel like we're doing amazing, and not, even though what he had to say, not that it wasn't valid, but the way that he was isolating himself to be inferior to us. Superior. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. But to be superior to us, he just isolated himself, and it just like made the whole shoot like, we're like, we want to wrap this up quick because we want to get away from you because you're not creating a fun place, right? Like now I feel like a little pig or a little dog when I'm next to you, rather than feeling like an equal, that we could work together and that we could create something that would be so great. Now it's like, I want to get this project done and leave.
Yeah, I like that. And it goes to show that there's so many different types of narcissists, and the way they project themselves can be so different. And I'm glad that we're bringing up this topic because it's something that like I was involved in a lot. I married a narcissist, and because of that, I went through a lot of therapies and read a lot of books and a lot of YouTube videos and a lot, because I was just like, how do I help? How do I withstand this? What do I do? And now that we're able to talk about it, and it's really interesting to see how everyone's different takes on where narcissists come from, what's the definition. And you're right, ultimately it's just that very self-serving, very I'm better than you, I deserve. And it comes from that place of I deserve this. And coming with that pompous, I deserve a certain kind of treatment. And I think one of the best analogies that I got when going through this season and learning about narcissism was you guys know the story of Beauty and the Beast, right? And we have Gaston, right? He's very evidently right away, narcissist, right? Like, that Gaston is really into himself and he's just pompous and arrogant, and he's just out there. So there's those narcissists that walk in a room and you're like, oh, you know it, right? Like you just know it. They walk in with that pompous attitude and right away you're able to identify that narcissism. But then you have the Beast, right? And a lot of people wouldn't associate the Beast as a narcissist, but the Beast was also a narcissist. And but where that narcissism, where that need of affection and admiration and just needing to be the best person in the room, the brightest person in the room came from, where it came from stemmed from a completely different place. One was being overly praised his whole life, and one was being completely neglected his whole life. But it grew up into both of them experiencing this, I need recognition. Yeah. And so a lot of people see the Beast as just this hurt, broken, poor guy who just has a misunderstood past, overlooking the fact that no, he was a narcissist too. And so we have these two different places where it might be stemming from a different place and coming and being projected in a different light. But at the end of the day, they both had this very self-serving, very toxic, very life-ruining kind of behavior of it has to be about me and what I look like. And so anytime I think of like narcissism, or I think about these kind of topics when I'm talking about it, is Beauty and the Beast. So that would be like the two differentiations. I think I pronounced that totally wrong, but the two different extremes of narcissism that come to mind is this is what we're dealing with in our world today. We're dealing with Gastons and we're dealing with the Beast. But people, despite the fact that they both have this very selfish, self-desiring fulfillment in their lifestyle, they get treated so differently, even though they probably shouldn't be treated differently because of the different backstory that they might have. Yeah. And so that goes into the next question is ultimately, what are some signs of dealing with the narcissist? How would you identify? I guess we kind of talked about that in what it is. But have you ever dealt with a narcissist? How would you deal with that in response to narcissism? What's a good way to, I'm trying to word this in the right way. Yeah. So in a dating sense, right? Because we're talking about dating. You're dating somebody and they might be displaying some signs of narcissism. What signs would you look out for in dealing with a narcissist, whether when you're dating someone or a friend is dating somebody? What are some good signs of identifying a narcissist and what to look out for?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Go, Kat.
Yeah, I think just like kind of back to the person that I used as an example, like even though he brought correction to a place or tried to bring something, it was self-serving. So I would say like if what they're doing, whether it's like technically the right thing, like what's the place that they're doing it? Are they doing it out of a place to be praised, or are they doing it out of an admiration for you? Of like, are they doing this to get their response to control the relationship of like, I gave you this, now you give me this. Like, are they seeing it as transactional, or is this person like, did they just mess up one time and you're like, oh my gosh, he's like trying to manipulate me? And it's like, no. So
yeah, that's good.
I would say that they're not willing. They're not willing to talk. They're not willing to listen. They're not willing to learn from whether it's mistakes or, a certain situation. They're know-it-alls, and in the egotistical kind of way. Like there's no willingness to admit that they might be at fault for something, an argument, a misunderstanding, whatever. Nothing gets through to them in that way. They're not able to recognize that. I think victim mentality is huge.
The victim mentality for sure.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yep. That's a really good indicator that they're not willing to learn in that capacity. Humility is not present. I mean, there's a lot of little things. And I think that's what's so hard too, is everyone struggles one way or another with humility, with not being willing, with not listening. There are those qualities in human nature because we are sinful human beings and we need the redemption in the blood of Christ. And so there's a balance in finding where those things lie. But something that I think that also comes to mind is that person willing to give glory to God? Because in what you were describing with this was a professor, you said?
this was an actor.
Okay, an actor. I don't know if he was a believer or not or whatever, but are they able to give God the glory in certain situations, or in every situation really? Like, are they verbally able to do that? And because we're a Christian dating podcast, like that is important. That's key. Like, are you able to admit that
100%.
God gets the glory in this situation? Whatever, you produce something, whatever the situation is, can they do that? Can they admit to that? And if they can't, again, that's not a full indication. Oh, well, they're a narcissist, but it can help in determining, okay, where does their heart lie when they're sharing about who they are and what they've done,
For sure.
That's good. So your question, just to make sure I understood it correctly, is how can you identify it in a dating relationship?
Yeah.
I think, I think you guys are pretty thorough with that. So I think for me, one of the things that I would say is if nothing that you do makes them not happy, but content. So they're constantly like, oh, that was cool, but, or maybe just not you, but pay attention to how they handle other people, right? So for example, like if it's constantly having a bad day, or it's constantly like, so-and-so did this, but I really wanted this, like this lack of gratitude. I think that's a big deal, because that's one thing that I've noticed is like, no matter what, no matter how much somebody tried to do something, like the person was never satisfied because it wasn't specific to what they wanted, or they didn't get an emotional explosion within themselves that they wanted, right? And so I think there's this high expectation that even if you meet, it's still not good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's their unwillingness to be happy.
Yeah. And I again, being married to, or was married, former, to a narcissist, I'm just going to share my own personal experience. At the time when we were dating, I just assumed that he was extremely confident person. And that was attractive to me because he was very, like he knew what he was good in. And so for me, it was just like, oh, he's just extremely confident. Looking back on it now, though, I can identify, oh, this was a problem. And so I'm going to share it with you guys because it's going to be different for each person. But for me personally, the things that I can go back on and go, oh, yeah, that was definitely the signs of a narcissist is one, he didn't have any close friends at all. And so that was a big one. And something that I take into consideration now is he had no close relationships, not with his family, not with anybody outside of our church. He had a very difficult time getting close with people. And it was out of that, well, they just don't understand me and I can't communicate with them and we just haven't clicked. And there's always excuses that I just kind of brushed aside. And I even recognized as a problem when we were dating, but I was just like, oh, but he's so great. In all of these other areas, this one red flag, I can just, bury and pretend like it doesn't exist. So that was a huge one though, was just realizing, oh my gosh, he had no friends, like at all. And he couldn't get close with anybody. And so, again, the excuse was, oh, we just don't have anything in common, or, they just don't get my sense of humor or whatever. There's always an excuse. But at the end of the day, it's very, very, very difficult for a narcissist to have close friendships. And they might be, and sometimes the narcissist is the most popular person in the room because again, it goes from that desire of attention and validation. But as far as close relationships, you're not going to see that with the narcissist. It's extremely difficult for somebody with that much pride to get close with anybody. So if you see that this person just doesn't have a close friendship with anybody, that's definitely a red flag and something you should look into. Another one is he couldn't ask for help. And that was something that I really noticed as another big problem was, he could give help because again, it goes to that self-validation. He was constantly willing to give and to serve, not for the sake of other people, but for the sake of just that recognition. But when it came to asking for help, that would break his pride. And so he never, ever, ever asked for help. And so those are just examples that I've personally experienced. I know there's so many more things, but I just wanted to share that because I know that that's something that I experienced and overlooked in my dating relationship with my ex. Because, it's again, he just came off as confident, but realizing now that, oh gosh, him not having friends, big red flag. And him not being able to ask for help is a big red flag. And so I guess my advice in that, if you're dating somebody that you're just like, not really sure, maybe they are just really confident. If there's any red flags, don't overlook them. They might have a ton of green flags, but that one red flag might just be a huge issue. Don't overlook it. And I think that when I started bringing these up, these minor red flags to people, I started to realize like I didn't actually investigate any of those red flags because they were an issue. But I was like, but he's so great in all of these other areas. It's not that big of a deal,
Yeah, I was gonna say so. This like totally relates. So I just finished reading a book called The Prodigal God, and it focuses on the prodigal son, but it's really like both the younger brother and the eldest brother. And it talked about a lot about how the older brother was upset with his father because of like the pride that he had in himself of like, I've done all this work for you, now you owe me this. And it all drew down to pride. But I love what you said. It's like, oh, I couldn't recognize the red flags and all these green flags. And also not noticing that all these green flags came from this red flag because he's like, because the person is like, oh, because they're prideful, they're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do all the right things so that nothing else can have power over me. So it's like, while those things can be great, of course, like the motive and the heart behind it, that's what you want to look for. You don't want
the red flag might be the very root of everything.
Yeah, because I mean, also it's so sad, but how many ministries have like very faithful servants and all these scandals come up? Like just because the person is doing that doesn't mean that they're in the right place or that they should be. In that place.
And that's a big one because I think, again, when we're thinking about narcissists, we think of that really pompous Gaston kind of personality. And you can go, well, I'm not dating that. He's definitely not that. And so they overwrite those things of like, oh, he's not like that. But you're right. Those acts of service and those compliments and those things that he's doing well might very well be rooted in an insecurity and a desire to just be validated, and not because he's actually a good person or has these selfless, desires. It could all be rooted in that one red flag that you're just overlooking because of all these amazing green flags, which is what I did. And so I would highly suggest if you're dating somebody with a red flag And it might not be a big deal. It might end up you investigate that, you look into it, you look for those proofs, and it might end up being, oh, okay, it really isn't that big of a deal. But you're not going to know until you know. So I would say just investigate those red flags. Don't overlook them. Don't pass them up. Investigate them.
Yeah. Something that you said that I kind of want to present, like big, I don't know how to word it, but you said that the person would either has no friends, but I think there's also included in that is also somebody that wants to be everybody's close friend. Because I've also have seen that where somebody that just wants to know all your secrets and they want to make everything all about you and they just want to be there for you. Like, so it's like that phrase that I totally butchered last time, the same sides, two sides of the same coin, where it's like, they're constantly just wanting to be there for you and all these things. So I think also like, does a way that to identify it is, can that person be your friend and be as close to you when you're not going through it? And because that's one thing that I've noticed is that people that are narcissistic, when you start elevating, that when you start being healed, when you start being whole, they don't know what to do anymore. They don't know their place in your life anymore. And so they start attacking you is the best way that I could put it, because then they're like, no, but you're this and you're that, and you're just like, wait, like, and I think that's, I don't know if you're gonna touch on it, like the gaslighting, right?
No, yeah, that's good. And it just goes back to identify the enablers in your life. Are these people enabling bad behavior? Or do they want you to stay in that place of brokenness? Because it validates them because they're the go-to,
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm like, are there people in my life like that?
No, honestly,
what's the investigation?
Yeah, and I know I briefly touched on it, but you brought it out a little bit more like more black and white, where it's just like, we all like, there's all these traits, right?
Yeah.
And even which is so important to like not be afraid of being called out on your crap, because even in the Bible it says that I wish I had like the exact scripture, maybe you guys know it, but it talks about how sin, when it's practiced, it turns into like death, right? And so there's this thing where it's just like, okay, like, just bringing it back to the simplistic way that we can all relate to, I think is like diet, right? Like, okay, like you're eating well and you're doing good and blah, 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 but all of a sudden you slip up and you have a cookie. And it's just like, oh man, like that sucks, right? Like, oh man, like I responded this way to this person when they called me out of my crap. Like, man, that sucks, right? But the sin now becomes when you continue to do that thing, okay? So instead of just having the mishap with the one cookie, now you're eating the entire freaking platter, whatever. And so now it's not something that your body can fight per se, right? Now it's affecting your body. And so in that same way, like when you are dealing with these things, right? When you're identifying these things, like, we never, I think as like, there's this hard balance, right? With Christianity, because it's like, you want to make sure that you have like these like black and white like boundaries and stuff, but there's also that aspect of grace, because sometimes people are not aware that they're doing these behaviors. Sometimes people are not aware, like, hey, you're being like this, right? And so as the word says, it's the Lord's kindness that brings us into repentance. And what a lot of people want to do is they want to punish, they want to yell, they want to call you out. But it's like this, like the Lord says, right, that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so then when people are able to take on the yoke of God upon them, then it's like, okay, like maybe I'm dealing with this, but let me yoke myself to the Lord, right? And so it's this whole thing that I wish, whatever. But it's like the Lord himself teaches you how to change those behaviors, right? And then now you begin to be self-aware. Now you begin to see all these things. And so it's like, like it's scary. Like nobody wants to be told that they suck, nobody. But at the same time, I think I shared it on my Instagram. There's this quote from Charles Spurgeon when he says, like, if any man thinks ill of you, he's like, don't be angry at that man because you're actually far worse. And when I read that, I was like, bruh. So, in the word it says, and I've touched on this before, that our good works are like rags to the Lord, and dirty rags to the Lord. And so when the Lord knows that about you, right, that you're like, that your best effort, your best thing, like the most amazing, beautiful thing that you can produce is a dirty rag onto him, like it kind of humbles you a little bit, right? Like it kind of takes that pressure of wanting to be perfect, wanting all these things. And a lot of people, like, instead of being like threatened with that, I think it's something that maybe we can just like submit ourselves to and be like, all right, like, you know, as David says in Psalm 139, you know my rising up, you know my laying down, you know me in the pits of hell, you know me in the best of places, like, you know my thoughts before they're even on my tongue. Like, the Lord knows. And so to think, if the creator of the universe knows, like, right, like God, the all being, the all sufficient, knows that you struggle with certain things, all of a sudden, like, other people knowing is really not that big of a deal. It's like, wait a minute, like, the God who I stand before knows that I struggle with this and gives me the grace to overcome and cleans me by his blood and does all these things. Like, you know what, like, it really comes down to Psalm 127. What can mere, not 127, 27. I think 27:1, where it says, what can mere men do to me? Like, you know, they came to devour my flesh and all these things, but what can they really do? And so when you have that kind of perspective, all of a sudden, like, you're like, wow, you're calling me out in these things. And yeah, you know, right, in the moment it hurts and it sucks. But at the end of the day, like, this is God's grace that it's allowing me to confront this thing that sucks. And so when you see that in other people, now you remember, like, man, like, I also suck. Yeah. So let me also help them, right? And again, I'm not saying that we're to be called doormats, right? Because one thing that I love about Shekinah's story is that I admire about her was that she literally fought tooth and nail. And what I think to the world, that may seem like, why did she stay for so long? Like, why did these things and blah, blah, blah. But like, Shekinah fought for what she believed in, right? And so that was what brought her, like, the resolve to be able to stay in that place and all these things until she heard the Lord. Like, there was a boundary that she placed, and she's like, all right, like, once this happens, like, that's it, like, I'm done. And so then, you know, to a lot of people, that's like weird. But in reality, like, there's Christianity where it's like, yeah, we have to have boundaries. And in another way, there's like this aspect of grace, right? Yeah. Where it's such a hard balance, which goes back to what Meenakshi said in the first episode, where it's so important to have Holy Spirit discernment, right? Yes. And you had that discernment when you were dealing with your narcissist, where it was just like, all right, you know what? Like, it's done. Like, and I remember me one day, like, dealing with a narcissist. Like, for years, they always told me, like, you're this, you're this, you're this. And one day I woke up and I was like, I'm not. Like, you're actually that. And then once I realized, I was like, wait, like, that's not me anymore. Like, I've been healed from that. And it's like my mind's opened up and all these things. And then, like, that relationship just, like, dwindled. No more relationship. Like, it just fell out 100%. And I was just like, wow, like, you know, and that's what drove me to say what I said, where it's just like the moment that you begin to be healed, that narcissistic component in a relationship, and no longer has footing in there. Yeah. And if you yourself find yourself like where somebody else is winning and all these things, and you begin pulling away, that's a red flag for you. Like, if you can't celebrate other people's victories, like, there's something going on here that you need to check out, you know?
Yeah, that's a big one. And yeah, I think the theme here is ultimately, how do you identify a narcissist? Because again, they come in all different variety and packages and attitudes. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, are they willing to self-improve? Meaning, are they willing to hear what other people have to say to them and reflect and truly change up their actions? And it really just comes down to their response of, if they get any kind of criticism at all, if they get any kind of correction in their behavior or their attitude, will they actually work on changing that? And again, it doesn't go back to being a doormat, but it does go down to, am I seriously willing to reflect on what this person says about me and make the appropriate adjustments based on what aligns biblically? And so it just goes back to know your identity, one, to help you stay away from being a narcissist yourself, and to identify that pride within yourself is when you hear someone criticize you or correct you, are you actually taking a moment to consider, okay, Lord, is this an area where I need to adjust my behavior? And I'm not saying you have to be happy about criticism, because sometimes someone calls you out on stuff and it's just, it hurts. Yeah, it sucks. But is your follow up and is the action going to be, but I will reflect and I will take this in consideration and I will take it to the Lord and go, okay, Lord, was this person right? You know, and it really just comes back to self-reflection. But if you're writing off what other people say about you right away, you're not willing to adjust yourself or think about it or meditate on it or even pray about it, that's definitely a sign of narcissist, whether it's in the other person or in yourself. It's something to just again, like we said last episode, self-check.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something to consider in light of, because it's easy to try to constantly look at other people's flaws and are you the problem, but also it's so prevalent in our world, again, with social media and our generation being raised the way that it was. It's very easily something that we can fall into ourselves. And so it's something that we should be checking regularly as well is, am I being selfish in this area? Am I being prideful? And I think one of the biggest indicators wherever that might be coming from is accountability, and just really, really willing to apply that accountability to your life. Are you going to other people and seeking, self-improvement tips, essentially?
Yeah.
And are you willing to listen? And are you willing to build upon that? And so I think that's just something that we can all really glean from ultimately is just, am I willing to listen? Am I willing to hear? One thing that I know, I used to struggle with pride majorly when I was in high school and early college years. One of the things that the Lord really dealt with is when I would be listening to a sermon or reading an article or reading scripture, whatever it was, I would constantly be thinking about somebody else. Man, this person could really use this word. Oh my gosh, that's a good point. I should share this with so-and-so, or man, I wish so-and-so were here. And it was constantly thinking about others and the way that they could be learning. And yeah, like if they were just like me, like, if only they were as perfect as I was, And so God was just like, I am sending you this word. You are the one sitting in this sermon. How are you going to apply it to your life? You are the one reading the scripture. How are you going to apply it to your life? And so the Lord really dealt with me on that. And that was one of the ways that I tackled that pride was the moment I thought of somebody else, I stopped, scolded myself, and was like, but what about me? Am I doing this? And is there something that I need to adjust in my life and my behavior to apply this to my life? Because clearly, if this was for somebody else, God would be showing that person, not me. And so that was a big pride breaker for me in that season, that God was just breaking that away from me, was just like, I am showing you this, So it really just came down to that of, I think it's really important that we can talk about other people all day long, and we can talk about how to identify a narcissist in your life, which is important for your safety and for your boundaries, but also identify it in yourself. That's a really big one. Is can you take correction and can you apply that to your life appropriately?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Any other?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, Melissa, but you shared I don't even remember where we were, but you had said something about if you are saying the phrase like, oh, God's really working on me in this area, but I can't even think of an example per se, but it's not an area that requires that kind of working on. Does that make sense? It's a repentance issue, essentially. It just made me think of that while you were sharing too, is like, that's a big area as well of being able to identify when somebody says that, or if you yourself are saying, oh, God's really working on me and, my whatever. I can't even think of an example. Maybe you can. But I remember you bringing that up. And that's a huge thing, because there are areas of God is working on me in, A, B, and C. But there are also other ones that should not be categorized in that way. There's very clear, either the word is very clear about that situation, and you're unable to see it, and it's being used in the wrong way, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've actually had that in my brain the past week.
Okay.
Which is crazy. But no, yeah, you're right. Like at the end of the day, like the Lord is the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And so when he tells me like the 10 commandments are non-negotiables, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is just for an example. So if he tells you do not murder, it's not, oh, well, God is dealing with me. Like maybe I shouldn't be killing people.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's don't murder.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's no negotiation. There's no this or that. Like it's black and white. If he tells you not to go and sleep around, like that is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
It's not like, he's not like while you're sleeping around, he's like, hey, maybe. No, he's like, you're committing adultery, right? So it's that. So it's getting violent with these things.
Yeah.
Honestly, getting to the point where it's just like, bro, like I'm so sick of putting up excuses,
Yeah.
And I think one more thing that I want to tackle in this topic is just, I think a lot of people, again, I brought up the example of like Gaston and the Beast, right? And I think a lot of people overwrite the Beast as being a narcissist because he had a tragic backstory, right? And he had the sad story. And I think that's what we do. I think I've seen this trend in modern day where the villain gets a backstory and suddenly you feel sorry for the villain. I used to read comic books, and so you had the villain and the hero, and it was very black and white. You had good versus evil, and now we're starting to see this trend, not even just in comic books, but like in movies and in even psychology today of people, you feeling sorry for the villain, you feeling sorry for the Joker because now you realize he had a really traumatic past. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of people are overriding really negative, toxic behaviors because, well, you just have to understand where they came from. And I think a lot of people are overriding that narcissistic behavior for the same reason, because we can recognize that this narcissist, yeah, he's being really selfish and it's not okay, but you don't understand his past. And I know more about his past than you do. And so that's something I kind of want to talk about. What do you guys think of that in terms of how that's playing out in society today? Do you think that someone should get special treatment on their negative behavior because it's coming from a place of trauma?
No. They don't grow.
Yeah.
Nobody grows in that kind of situation. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be a narcissist to need to be someone who grows. Everyone has an area of growth. And even what you were saying, we present everything we absolutely can and it's still a dirty rag to the Lord.
Yeah.
And he's not viewing that as ill, but we need the love and the grace and the kindness and the mercy in order to still come before him even as that dirty rag. And that goes beyond being a narcissist. That is every human being on this planet. That is the desire of the Lord, is that you can still present yourself as that dirty rag and he is still willing to meet you there, So I think there's areas of helping those people, but in the end, no behavior is justified.
Yeah.
There's a need for growth in every capacity.
No,
So
I agree.
I think in that kind of what I've heard from everybody talking, especially you right now, Manak, is that treating growth as if it's an option, or what you said right now, treating what God said as an option. That's as if you have a say in it. Because at the end of the day, we're little worms before God. To be honest, I'm not nothing big. Anything that I could give to God, he says it's a dirty rag, not because he doesn't love me or not because he views me as less, but it's only in him where we find everything. Yeah. And whether you've had trauma or not, to a degree, everybody's gone through things, but it's it's not an option for you to sit here and to not get better. It's not an option for you to do that. It's quite selfish, to be quite honest, because now it doesn't just affect you, it affects all the people around you. So treating it as if you have a choice to do that, even though, free will, I don't like free will because it leads me to do certain things that I lead myself to do certain things I don't want to. But it's no, there's no option there.
yeah.
I agree. Let me just bring it home for a little bit, because the last thing I need is somebody to come at me with this. When I said that our works are dirty, 100%, there's this humility, right? Where it's just wow, you really, nothing I do could ever equate to the sacrifice of Jesus.
Yeah.
So you don't stay in that place, right? Where it's just wow, and I'm not I just want to, because I know what you mean. I just want to make sure I bring the whole picture, right? Because we may be dirty worms to the, not dirty worms, but worms to the Lord, right? Even the word says in the Psalms that the Lord looks at us and he pities us. And so to me, I'm thank God, right? But it's not just that, because then, right, the word says that we are kings and priests, we are a royal priesthood, we are a chosen generation, we are all these things. And so there's humility is understanding and also elevating, right? And so I understand that outside of Christ, I'm nothing, but I understand because of Christ, I am something.
Yes.
And so that is really important for me to say, because people take it to the two different extremes. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
The question ultimately was, do you think it's okay to be mistreated knowing they have a traumatic past?
Sure. Well, let's look no further than the word. Jesus was, I'm sure, mistreated because he didn't have a legitimate father. God didn't deal with him according to that. He didn't say oh, you went through a lot. People rejected you because of that. And God fathered him through that, right? And Jesus grew in stature among men and in reputation. And then look at David, right? God was never oh my God, my poor baby. You weren't the shepherd. Nobody wanted you here. No, he called him a king. He's okay, you're going to go through a process of growth. With the Israelites, they went through slavery for 400 years. God didn't bring them out and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He said, all right, I'm bringing you out into the wilderness so that you can learn to fear me, and you're going to grow and you're going to be discipled. And so to think otherwise is pride, and now you're putting yourself in a place where God should be. And so to give, like, obviously there's grace. People grow like a baby, right? When a baby is born, you're not gonna be like, bro, like, get it together. Me. Yeah. Why are you crying so much, you know? But there is this element of making the baby independent, right? And as they're security brings independence. And so I think to bring it home, no.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And just, again, like, that's why I've been noticing this trend, and it's just like, you know, again, the villain gets a backstory. Suddenly you feel sorry for the Joker.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Oh, he's still murdering people, but we get it because he had a horrible backstory. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And so I've just been seeing this trend of just in general, and it's implemented into all of our lives of just, you know, staying with the toxic, abusive boyfriend because, but you know, he was really abused by his father, and because of that, he just picked up on that, and he, you know, he can't help it. And you know, at the end of the day, I understand that there is grace, but that comes from God.
Yeah.
And you still have a choice to make every single day. These people, everyone has a choice to make. You know what I mean? And bringing it back again, I'm nerding out today. Bringing it back to comic books, bringing it back to comic books. That, you know, Batman had a tragic backstory too.
Yeah.
And yet he's using that, and he's still making the choice to do good and to provide justice, you know. And I know a lot of people who have been abused and neglected and just the worst of traumatic experiences you can have, and yet they grew past that, and they're helping people. And because they went through that, they know what it's like, and they know that they don't want to put other people through that, so they become better. So if you find yourself in a really toxic relationship, friendship, dating, whatever it is, and you find that this person is using their backstory to manipulate you, that's a time you need to know for yourself. Again, it goes back to identity. You don't deserve that. And that's where you need to step back and realize that this person is an adult. This person has a choice to make every single day they wake up. They have a choice to make. And if they're using it to hurt you, it's not because of their backstory. It's really just because they're a jerk and they're selfish. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they you know, grew up on, you know, the wrong side of the tracks, for lack of a better term. But it's really because at the end of the day, they're selfish. And what a narcissist, what an addict, what they're looking for, whether consciously or subconsciously, is an enabler. And that's someone that they can manipulate into justifying their behavior and to serving them and to being their cheerleader, even though they're not deserving of it. Yeah. And they haven't done anything to deserve that. And so that's just really something to look out for is, in a narcissist, are they using their backstory to manipulate you into staying and make you feel bad or feel guilty for wanting to leave? That's a big one to look out for. And if you want to leave that relationship, I want you to know that you're justified in that, and that's okay. And they're an adult, and they're either a big boy or a big girl. And if they're using their free will to hurt you, manipulate you, you have every right to leave and set that boundary. And so I know that's a big one for a lot of men and women who get caught up in those toxic relationships but I just don't want to leave them and make them feel like, you know, the way that their dad, you know, when they went out for milk and never came back. And
bye.
Yeah. Sorry, cookies. That was a bad joke, but you know, trying to lighten up a little bit. But I know a lot of people who are stuck in that place of being in a horrible relationship, and they really just feel bad for their partner but you don't understand what they went through. And at the end of the day, just because the Joker had a traumatic backstory, he's still a murderer and he still needs to be in jail. And that's my take on that. I've been nerding out a little bit, but so any follow-ups on that before we close out? No. All right. Who had the tip of the week today?
'Twas I.
Yeah.
'Twas you.
My tip is think about the last time that somebody called you out on something and analyze whether you worked to improve that or not. If you did, celebrate, right? That's cool. That's awesome. If you haven't, then look for some steps on how you can address whatever they brought to you. Simple, quick, beautiful.
Good.
Thanks.
Mic drop. Don't drop the mic. Just kidding.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for staying. Thank you for letting me host this episode.
Thank you. You did great. We both did better. Good.
We will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.